Welcome to today's Digital Mental Health Technology Project Progress webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You have joined the presentation listening using your computer's speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the telephone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions via Slido at www.slido.com using the event code #DMHT. You may send in your questions relating to the webinar at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. Please note that we will not be accepting questions via the GoToWebinar chat function. It is now my pleasure to introduce your first speaker, Holly Cool, Senior Manager, Digital Mental Health from MHRA.
Morning everyone, thank you for joining the webinar today. Hopefully we'll be able to give you a bit of an update as expected on the progress of the Wellcome funded Digital Mental Health project and also demonstrate the launch of the e-learning resources that we have developed in collaboration with NHS England. For those of you that are not aware of the team behind this project, so I'm Holly Cool, I'm the Senior Manager for Digital Mental Health here at the agency, and also will be joined by Francesca Ederman, who is working on this project as well, and she will be hopefully available for questions alongside myself at the end of this webinar. We'd like to move to the next slide, please. So to give you an idea of what we'll be covering today, 4 items. So we're providing you with the project overview and progress, the launch of the e-learning and a short demonstration, an overview of the project extension that we were successful in achieving a few months ago and will commence later this year, and an opportunity for questions. Next slide, please. So to start, we will be giving you a bit of an overview on the project to date and the progress that we have been making as we steam quite quickly towards the end of the project, which will be concluding at the end of April. So for those that aren't aware, just to give you some context, so we at the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency work as an executive agency sponsored by the Department of Health and Social Care, and our role is to regulate medicines, medical devices, including software as a medical device and blood components for transfusion in the UK. Next slide, please. So the Digital Mental Health Technology Project is a Wellcome funded project that commenced in May 2023, and as I mentioned, will conclude at the end of April 2026. So we have been working collaboratively with NICE, so the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, to clarify the regulatory requirements and evaluation approaches to digital mental health technologies, primarily that qualify as software as a medical device. We've been engaging with a wide range of stakeholders and vitally included people with lived and living experience of mental health to inform those outputs that have been produced. And our overall goal has been to improve access to safe, effective digital mental health technologies to improve mental health outcomes. Next slide, please. For those that haven't already seen, we have a comprehensive collection page, which the QR code here will enable you quick access to. This will provide you with an opportunity to see all of the published outputs to date, including academic papers, our guidance updates, market research reports that have been produced and commissioned through a partner who are experts in undertaking market research, and press release links and so forth. So please do take a quick picture of this QR, and that will take you directly to our collection page. The webinar today and previous webinars are also recorded and placed on this website for easy access and reference later if you need to. Next slide, please. So this is just to update you on some of the project objectives and outputs that have been largely achieved through this work. So we've had a life cycle approach as part of this project, looking at the full development process of a software as a medical device for digital mental health. And the stages have moved from defining the intended purpose and determination of whether or not the product qualifies in scope of medical device regulation, right through to the supporting of professional and patient choice. So we've worked to try and clarify at each stage whether there are any need for additional guidance or resources to be able to enhance the understanding of regulatory adherence, but also for stakeholder awareness of what those regulatory requirements are and how to select or recommend a safe and effective product. And we've been working quite diligently throughout the last 3 years to be able to ensure that these outputs map to each of those life cycle processes and stages. And we would like to give you a bit more of an update today on one specific aspect, which is around the targeting professionals and members of the public in updating them on how to select a safe and effective digital mental health technology. But a lot of the other work that we've undertaken, some of it is still ongoing until we conclude right through to the project end date. And I'll give you a little bit more of an update on some of those in the next slides. Next slide, please. So the significant updates for the project, as you are probably already aware, was the guidance that we published in February last year. We did have a webinar on this particular output, and that was for the characterization, qualification and classification of digital mental health technologies as software as a medical device. So this guidance has enabled us to really ensure that manufacturers and developers are aware of their regulatory obligations in terms of placing a product on the market in the UK, and this has enabled us to undertake some compliance activity in this space as well to ensure that products that are on the market either with incorrect or inadequate classification, or actually in some instances wellbeing products that should have been in scope of medical device regulation have been approached accordingly. We do hope that this document maintains its iterative and evolutionary approach, so we welcome any comments and usability comments and advice in terms of this particular guidance, as we have already updated this a couple of times since its initial publication. Another significant update is our work with the British Standards Institute, so BSI, and we're actually working on a clinical evidence standard for the evidence generation for digital mental health technologies. And we hope that this will become not only a UK benchmark for what is required for clinical studies for digital mental health technologies, but that consensus will be achieved on a global scale to be able to take this to ISO, so that globally there'll be a much better awareness and baseline for what's required for these types of studies. We've also undertaken a knowledge community activity with the World Health Organization, and the report is in progress for this particular piece of work, due hopefully towards the end of February, and with publication in the months after. And this was particularly focused on looking at how significant change and predetermined change control plans could look and operate for digital mental health technologies specifically. So we hope to be able to understand what the global ecosystem operating and understanding in this space feel is appropriate and risk proportionate for significant change in this space, and be able to then feed into any of our policy development for predetermined change controls across the agency. And then the last significant update here is the e-learning, and that's excuse me, what I'll be giving you a bit more insight in today. Next slide, please. So just wanted to go back to a summarization of our guidance that we issued, and again really this is just to reiterate why this is so important when we've been thinking about delivering further resource for the public and for healthcare professionals to understand about when these products qualify as medical devices, and why it's important to be able to recognize that and know how to report concerns if there are any. So we have deemed there to be medical purpose for mental health when they're intended as a part of a broad process involved in the management of mental ill health. And this does therefore include digital mental health technologies that help with any form of assessment of risk, diagnosis, prediction, monitoring, treatment, or prevention of mental health conditions or symptoms where they are considered at levels diagnosable or clinically relevant, and are intended either for patients, the public, and or healthcare professionals. So in our guidance in the figures that we've produced, we've tried to make this as readable and usable as possible. We summarise the breakdown of the process for determining when a digital mental health technology has a medical purpose, and this is formed of 2 steps. So does it perform a clinical task? And we provide examples of those clinical tasks that are covered by the EU Medical Device Directives, device definition in there. And once you've determined whether or not it's performing that clinical task, we look at whether or not the DMHD targets clinical conditions and symptoms. And as noted here, page 14 or table 2 in the guidance provides those explanations in more detail. Next slide, please. And this is again that summary. So what we're making clear here is that the determination of when a digital mental health technology has a medical purpose is based on its intended purpose, the functionality in the labelling, the instructions for use, and its promotional materials. So that includes websites, social media, and advertising, as well as its technical documentation. But it's also assessed by checking the understanding of a typical user and how they believe that from an objective standpoint, that product is actually being used and interpreted in the real world. So the flow, as you can see, whether it performs a clinical task, yes or no. If yes, does it target clinical conditions and symptoms? And if yes, it is likely to have medical purpose. If no to one or both of those, then it's unlikely to have that medical purpose. But very important to be referencing the clinical terms and definitions that are within the guidance, because a lot of these definitions are being very clearly used within wellbeing technologies, and we need to be very aware of the fact that these products have a very clear and defined intended purpose, and that they need to be consistently promoted across all sources of any promotional material that are being offered for these devices as well. Next slide, please. This is the table that I alluded to with regards to the medical device definition terms and those examples of what corresponding clinical tasks could look like. So you can see here where we've got definition terms for diagnosis, monitoring, treatment, compensation and prevention. These are the types of descriptions that could be used where we would map those directly onto those types of definitions. And here we provide what feels like a very comprehensive list of types of tasks that would be performed by digital mental health technologies that could map to those types of definitions. And it's really important, therefore, that if any of these this language is being used to define how a product is intended to operate or to be used with within its intended environment, that the evidence that supports this kind of claim is consistent and that the clinical evidence that backs it is available. Next slide, please. So we'll be going on to the project extension overview now. So as I mentioned, this was a successful grant application that we achieved a notification of at the end of last year. And this enables us for a further 2.5 years of funding, which will commence in May of this year, running through to the end of October 2028. Next slide, please. And click through to the complete table. Thank you. So what we've had here is at the core patient safety. We understand that these technologies still present a number of concerns amongst the ecosystem about how they're being used, how they're regulated, and what the evidence base is for them. And we know at the moment that artificial intelligence is one of those most significant concerns and that is most talked about amongst the ecosystem. So our goal is to make sure that at the beginning of this project, we have a really clear picture of what it is that we want to achieve and why that we're going to be setting out some of these particular objectives to enhance patient safety. The first aspect of the extension will involve the launch of a digital mental health AI airlock. So we'll be leveraging the success of both the pilot and phase 2 of airlock in the agency to make sure that we can offer capability to analyse the regulatory queries that present specifically for digital mental health technologies that utilise AI. We are developing the call for that at the moment, so more news will be shared as and when we have that information. Today is not, unfortunately, a time that we're ready to be able to share that information with the ecosystem, but we will do once we have that information available. And what we hope here is that we can take a number of technologies or concepts through an airlock process to really understand how digital mental health AI is being applied, what the guardrails are that could be offered to ensure that these products work safely and effectively in real world use. A second work package is looking at international engagement, and this really focuses on the regulatory harmonisation and knowledge sharing that we've built through the course of this initial project, and also hopes to extend through to understanding how we can share knowledge around the effectiveness of how regulators and health technology appraisal organisations can work together to better enhance the system and understanding of regulatory and evidence requirements for these technologies. We know that there's a huge appetite globally to harmonise approaches for regulatory approaches for digital mental health, and that whilst at the moment some of that remains uncertain, we will be working as best we can to ensure that where there are opportunities to work with in jurisdictions that would wish to mature their approaches to regulations, we can offer that insight, but also to try and ensure that we maintain the contacts with our partners, such as in the IMDRF, so the International Medical Device Regulator Forum, to ensure that we constantly work towards that objective goal of harmonisation towards our regulatory approaches. We'll also be undertaking a significant compliance work package. So this will involve an understanding of the impact of the regulatory guidance that we issued last year and the updates to the post-market surveillance guidance that we issued with specific examples for digital mental health. We'll also be looking at undertaking a strategy to approach the non-compliance of digital mental health technologies that we know are widely available on app stores and to some extent that are used within clinical practice. What we would like to be able to do is ensure that a strategy approaches all of the requirements of our regulatory obligations, but also an understanding how the application of things like the BSI standard can be embedded within the approaches for developing evidence for these types of technologies early. So a lot of this work will require, again, a multi-system approach and ensuring that as many stakeholders as possible can be involved in ensuring that compliance is adhered to across the whole ecosystem at multiple stages of the pathway. It's a very difficult package to unpick because of the multi-system approach, and understandably with AI there are lots of ongoing activities in this space, so we're very cognizant of making sure that all of our stakeholders are aware of what our anticipated goals are for this particular work package, but that we also work to maintain public and patient safety in the meantime, and actively enforcing the regulations that as they stand currently for non-compliant devices. Next slide, please. So I wanted to give you more information about the e-learning materials that we've developed in collaboration with NHS England's. Next slide, please. So we've been working with the MindEd technology enhanced learning team at NHS England to develop very specific resources that enable free access for professionals, and this is health, social care and education professionals, and for the public. Now, these resources provide graded levels of detail on regulation, evaluation and the safety monitoring of digital mental health technologies, and these can be applicable to role and interest as well as particular learning obligations for different individuals as well. What we do is try and highlight that identification and reporting of safety concerns is paramount. So regardless of whether a technology is understood to be a medical device or not, that anybody can report concern to the yellow card scheme. We know that reporting for digital technologies is particularly low, and that we want to make sure that we are not putting an inordinate amount of obligation on users to make a regulatory assessment. If they have a concern about any product, that they can report that, and then an investigation can ensue if it's felt that that's to be required. This resource has been developed in collaboration with the project working group. So there has been about 18 months of work to develop these resources, and it has been iteratively designed and developed with the Digital Mental Health Technology Working Group over that period. And as I say, also in conjunction with the MindEd team. Next slide, please. So the actual resources are available, as I've mentioned, free, and these are on the eLearning for Healthcare platform that's provided by NHS England. Once you go through to the eLearning for Health platform, you can then access the MindEd hub area, which is the specific and dedicated area for mental health related resources. Next slide, please, which will then give you a little bit more of an idea as to what that actually looks like on its homepage. And then you can search the e-learning for digital mental health technologies or regulation or evaluation, and those resources will be available. Now, it's really important to note that we know that NHS England may be undergoing a bit of a shift in terms of where these resources are housed, but all of these will still remain free to access. Regardless of how the material looks at the moment, there will be a shift in terms of where its home will be, but all of those will be notified publicly if they do move from this particular location. Next slide, please. So this is the website address for the eLearning for Health programme. And this is easily accessed through any browser, and it can be accessed on your phone and iPads and through laptops. But what I wanted to do was give you an overview of one of the animations that's embedded within the actual programme. Now, the two animations that feature within each of the resources are condensed versions of all of the materials, so that if anybody were to only take away one very short message from the resource, it would be all contained within that 2.5-minute animation. And I'd like for us to play one of the animations for you today. If we could go on to our next slide, please. And hopefully we can play this for you now.
Apps and digital tools are routinely becoming part of the way health and social care professionals and patients communicate and manage all aspects of our professional and personal lives, including health and well-being. Digital mental health technologies include products such as websites, apps, and virtual reality software. They can play a role in supporting a person's mental health, and it's important to know how these products are regulated and how you can select an appropriate product for yourself. Not all digital technologies are medical devices, but for those that are, they will have been through the CE or UKCA certification process. And whilst conformity with this should be clearly stated, you may need to check through the website or app to locate this. This means that it has been assessed to meet criteria relating to medical device regulations in the UK. To understand whether the digital technology is right for you, you might want to check how and with whom the product was created, and whether there is any supporting evidence for who it has been tested on and how effective it was for this group of people. To do this, you may want to look for links to published research and see whether this reflects the kind of experiences that relate to you and your symptoms. Research papers should summarise how the trials were undertaken, with whom, and what the results were in a format you understand. If you select a digital technology that is CE or UKCA accredited, and you feel that it has caused your symptoms to unexpectedly worsen, or has had an undesired or negative effect on you that was not made clear in the instructions for using the product, you can report these as suspected adverse events to the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, more commonly known as the MHRA, via the Yellow Card scheme. The MHRA is the UK regulator for medicines and medical devices, including software as a medical device. They oversee the safety of these products and can intervene if a trend of adverse events, known as safety signals, are detected. The Yellow Card scheme is just one source of data the MHRA uses to identify the occurrence of adverse events. Your report will contribute to the signal detection process and will be duly acted upon if a concerning trend is detected. Digital mental health technologies should provide an alternative resource to manage your mental health needs, and many people find them helpful. Regardless of whether or not you have reported to the MHRA, you should always contact a healthcare professional if you are concerned about your mental health. For more information on medical device regulation, visit www.gov.uk/MHRA.
Thank you. I think we have the next slide. Excellent. So the animation, as I mentioned, is within the resource. This is just a little bit of a demonstration to show you how to access the material. So you can access without a login. You can just play and press continue as you go through these resources. And I wanted really just to give you an overview of the look and feel. So it's easy for you to access some more information on the hyperlinks throughout. And each of the sections are drop downs, largely as drop downs, so you can see what you've accessed, open and close each of the boxes. The animations are available, and you can flip back and forth between all of this material. They are broken down into two different levels. There's a briefer, more concise description of the information for the first part, and then there's what is being described as an extended resource or extended learning for users that are interested in more detail or have a role or a particular interest in knowing more and in more detail. And what we try and do is focus on some key steps for understanding what to look for these types of technologies, and it enables you to work through really systematically in understanding what to be aware of in terms of who the product's designed for, what the regulatory status of those products are, looking at the data privacy and data security, and also then how to report through Yellow Card. So this really is just a bit of a demonstration of how to navigate through. You can access this whenever you like, and again, as we've already mentioned, there are two different types of resources designed for healthcare professionals, and then another set of resources designed for the public. They have very similar content, but the language has been slightly tailored for each of those groups of stakeholders. The animation that we have just played, that was focused on the public, as you may have noticed in some of the language that was used. And I'd urge any healthcare professionals or social care or education professionals that have joined us today to go and have a look at the resource that is dedicated to those particular stakeholders, as the animation is slightly different and mentions obligations of reporting and potentially reporting to other agencies as part of your normal processes for incident reporting there as well. If we can move to the next slide, please. So that really is our approach to where we are at the moment, our update on the Digital Mental Health Technology project. Hopefully you found it helpful to have a bit of a status update as to where we are, what's likely to come next. And as I've said, we'll share more detail with that when we have more information to share. But the key message today is to please go and have a play with these e-learning materials. They are there to be able to support and enhance learning. They're not to turn people into regulators. What we want is just to make sure that people are aware of what the regulatory requirements are, to stop and think about what a technology is designed for, whether it has appropriate evidence aligned with it, and how to report concerns if there are any. Thank you very much for listening, and I believe we'll be now moving to a Q&A session. So hopefully everyone's been able to access Slido, and we'll see if we have any questions come through. So we have a question about the project extension. Can I say any more about that? As I've already mentioned, we'll share information as and when we can. Hopefully you were able to join at the point where I did summarise what the extension work packages were focused on. So we have a digital mental health technology AI airlock, we have a compliance package, and we also have an international harmonisation and engagement package as well. As I've mentioned, we are still in the planning phase for all of this work. So once we have more information, we'll be able to share that more publicly. So I'm not seeing any more questions. Hopefully that means we've been comprehensive. So when do we plan to launch the AI airlock? As I've already mentioned, we are in the planning phase for the next stage of work for the extension. As and when we have information to be able to share that publicly, we will share that with stakeholders. Can you please tell us a bit more about the work you are doing to accelerate the regulatory process for new innovations and products? So our project is not designed to accelerate regulatory process. Our project is designed to ensure that the regulatory requirements for digital mental health technologies are clear and accessible. There are other activities going on in the agency, or that have been undertaken in the agency, to provide some of those accelerated routes or understanding for innovative devices and accessing markets. The remit of this project is not to do that. We are here to make sure that the regulatory requirements are clear, and the airlock will serve as a mechanism for ensuring that some of those knotty technical details relating to digital mental health technologies are explored through a sandbox. Another question here about whether a device that alleviates a single symptom counts as a medical device under the guidance. For example, worry with is a symptom of generalized anxiety disorder, but on its own is not a clinical condition. This used to be seen as well-being, but now is unclear. So I think what we need to do here is go back to the requirements of the guidance and understanding whether or not the intended use is to target symptoms at levels considered diagnosable or at clinical levels, and whether or not there is evidence for the product to actually be mitigating any concerns relating to that particular focus of the product. Sorry, I'm getting my explanations a little bit wrapped around. Frankie, are you available just to come in and clarify the answer for that question, please?
Hello, nice to see everyone. Well, not see them, but so in terms of, can you clarify whether a device that alleviates a single symptom counts as a medical device under this guidance? For example, worry is a symptom of anxiety disorder, but on its own, it's not a clinical condition. So yeah, this is hopefully clarified in our MHRA guidance for digital mental health technologies on qualification and classification. So if a product is targeting a symptom, which is a symptom of a clinical condition, and if the product is targeting those who are experiencing levels of that symptom that could be considered to be diagnosable or clinically relevant. So that doesn't mean that they necessarily have a diagnosis, but they're at levels that could give them a diagnosis or could be clinically relevant, then that indeed would be considered to be a medical purpose. Hopefully does that cover it there, Holly?
Yeah, I think so. Sorry, I was getting my answer wrapped around my tongue, so thank you. Is there a resource list of licensed DMHTs available? So digital mental health technologies that are registered as with the MHRA are available on our public access database, our PARD database. So this is a list of all products that are regulated as medical devices. So these will be class 1s and above. That does not necessarily mean that they are recommended for use. So there is a distinction between a resource list in terms of recommended products and a list of products that are registered as medical devices. I think we've already answered this question, so if we can move to the next one. Do we consider there to be a conflict of interest in the MHRA selling consultancy services and streamlining the regulatory process to prevent a bottleneck? I think this sounds as though it might be referring to the regulatory advice meetings, which are not consultancy. So I would urge you to read the requirements and specifications on the gov.uk website with regards to how to access that specific advice. Any consultancy should be accessed through a regulatory consultant, which is independent of the MHRA. So we don't offer a regulatory consultancy. Next question, please. Are there plans to develop guidance for users about how to select safer and quality DMHTs? I'm not sure whether or not you joined perhaps after the section of this webinar which described what it is that we're promoting today. It is an e-learning resource that does help both public and healthcare professionals in their ability to select safer and effective digital mental health technologies. So the guidance is designed to help users understand how to do that. Next question, please. How do users know when a product they're using meets the requirements? Good question. It's a tricky one because obviously everybody's use cases do differ. And I think the best thing to do is to be able to look through the information that's available for the product. And if in doubt, then consult a professional if that's something that you feel like you need to discuss with them. But also perhaps there's a mechanism by which if you feel that there is an inconsistent application of what that product is describing that it can do and what you feel that you need it for, and you have concerns, then you can report those through to the yellow card scheme. But unfortunately, it is a very tricky question to answer because there isn't necessarily a clear response in knowing, particularly with mental health, whether or not that product is doing harm, whether it's being helpful at all. So an objective stance is often needed, which is why it's really helpful for all the health and social care and education system, as well as the public, to know what these products are capable of offering and how to report concerns if they notice that either themselves or someone that's using a product is perhaps not benefiting from its use. Will DMHTs have visibility of yellow cards reported about their services? So by the looks of this question, will the developer know what yellow card reports are coming in about their products? So if a digital mental health technology is a regulated medical device, there are legal obligations for the developer and the manufacturer to submit reports of adverse events. So they will, in essence, know about the events that have happened associated with their products. For yellow card reports that come through either from healthcare professionals or from members of the public, if there is a safety signal of concern, then the MHRA will then contact the developer to alert them to these types of signals coming through. So yes, there will be a route by which the developers will be informed of information relating to the use of their technology, either through the vigilance system, as I've described, which is a manufacturer obligation to report, or through the investigation of yellow card reports, by which case the MHRA will approach the manufacturer to request further information about the investigation of a particular safety signal. Is a digital platform meant for wellbeing and preclinical populations, but you have an open platform, and so users with clinical symptoms decide to use it? Do you advise getting medical device accreditation? So Frankie, you might want to come in here and help perhaps with this explanation. But if you are designing a product that you know will be used by both users with both well-being or like low-level or not undiagnosable or undetectable clinical symptoms, right through to a clinical presentation, and you're aware of that, and the functionality and capability offers support and advice and guidance in how to manage those particular symptoms or diagnoses. As a developer and a manufacturer, you need to be able to demonstrate whether you can offer the appropriate support for that breadth of population with a supporting clinical evidence, or you provide a very clear mechanism for which those that have the clinical presentations do not continue to engage with the system. So it's about making it really clear about what the intended purpose of that particular product is, and providing appropriate signposting for those that are intended not to use that particular system or platform. Frankie, I don't know if you want to bring in any more definition there.
I agree exactly with what you've said. So in answer directly to the question, yes, we would advise that if it's being used by those who do have clinical symptoms, that it should be regulated as a medical device. If you're wanting it not to, you need to change the product so that it's not being used by that population.
Thanks, Frankie. So this is a follow-up question. I'm assuming to the question with regards to adding to what we described as the public access registration database. Are DMHTs added to that list automatically on licensing or approval? So that is a mechanism by which the developer and the manufacturer register themselves. So that is updated in line with manufacturers gaining the either appropriate accreditation from UKCA or CE routes. Hopefully that answers that question. Next question is that e-learning seems to be focused on identifying non-compliant services or reporting issues with services. Is information available to help users discover regulated DMHTs beyond access to the PARD? I think this might be a misinterpretation of the e-learning, as it's focused on identifying the regulatory requirements. So it provides objective information about what the regulations are and what to look for when you are reviewing or potentially recommending or selecting a product for use. Is information available to help users discover regulated DMHTs? So there is no library. There isn't a resource library that exists for recommending technologies. So this is designed to provide information to allow users to inform themselves of what a safe and effective technology would look like, but it also doesn't discredit any products that are not regulated and that might be well-being technologies that could otherwise be very helpful, but it's enabling people to understand what a regulated product looks like and how to report concerns for technologies if they do appear to be inconsistent with either what the claims are or if they are causing harm. Next question, please. What's the average time to obtain UKCA for digital mental health technology? Is it more lengthy than digital health technologies? Unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to answer this question because it depends on the classification route for these technologies, and they are undertaken either there's a self assessment for class 1s, so it's however long it takes for the manufacturer and for the developer to gain all of the required technical documentation and clinical evidence to be able to self-certify. And for class 2A products and above, these require notified or approved body assessment, conformity assessment. So it depends on the capability of those ABs or NBs to be able to undertake those assessments. But my current understanding is that there is no difference or no excessive wait time compared with normal digital health technologies. And what seems to be causing concerns is lack of quality clinical evidence for the products that are being submitted for approval at this time. Next question, please. At what stage should a product have reached in its development to apply to use the airlock? As I've mentioned a few times now, we don't have a full set of information to be able to promote the applications for the airlock at this time. So once we have more information about the digital mental health technology airlock, we'll be able to circulate that to the ecosystem so that these questions can be answered in full. Does the new training also include other standards applicable to the NHS, such as DTAC, DCB 139 and 160? As we are clearly here providing information from a regulatory perspective for the MHRA and what to look for on a very high level, we try and make sure that we're providing information that's understandable for both the public and for healthcare professionals at those levels. Any other information that's specific to the NHS, they would need to be provided by those particular organisations. So our role and remit is to provide the understanding of the medical device regulations and not for any other safety standards that apply. Next question, please. Will mental health apps that have the CE or UKCA mark be made available on planned health store? Unfortunately, I'm not aware of what the health store is, but as we've already described, the MHRA are not here to endorse any particular use of products. The public access registration database will be the objective mechanism for which registered products with medical device regulatory conformity are available for viewing. So there are no plans for any other library resources to be accessed at this time or populated with any regulated medical devices. Next question, please. If a device obtains approval but continues to evolve, would there be a requirement to obtain regulation again? This relates to our work that we're undertaking around significant change and predetermined change control plans for digital mental health technologies. We believe that if the product extends its intended purpose or that changes beyond reasonable scope of the original regulated product, then you would likely need to gain reapproval for that product, particularly if the evidence requirements have changed and that you've extended your intended purpose to include a broader population that was not originally in your intended scope, or in which case your functionality changes to make there a change in the risk profile for that particular technology. So it's a case-by-case application. And it's really important to know that if you have plans to evolve your product once it's deployed, that you are aware of the obligations from a regulatory perspective to continually assess and make sure that it's aligned with your original intended purpose. Is there anything else to add on that, Frankie? Sorry.
No, I think that covers it, yeah.
Next question, please. What's the best route for developers to ask follow-up questions and what we've presented if we think of them after this session? Good question. Developers, depending on what the question is, if it relates to a specific product, you can always access the information, I think it's the info@mhra.gov.uk email address. It depends very much on what the nature of the question is. But yeah, that would be my best option, is if you wanted to speak to us through the info@, and then questions will be directed to us accordingly. What types of benefits are there already evidence for DMHD? And additionally, what types of harm? If you read our post-market surveillance for software as a medical device guidance, there are examples of the types of harm that could occur. We aren't able to share any specific details of products for which harm may have occurred through investigation through the MHRA, but there are also widely publicised benefits and harms associated with these technologies, as there are for any other medicines and medical devices that are publicly available. But unfortunately, we can't discuss any of the specific cases of benefits and harm, but we know that they can offer benefits to those that use them. Next question, please. Lovely, thank you very much. What is the status of work on significant updates of software? I assume this relates to the status of work on significant change. So there is a programme of work being undertaken by the agency with regards to significant change and predetermined change control plans. As I've already alluded to, we have undertaken a project with the World Health Organization to look at this specific to digital mental health, and a report will be coming in the next few months to be able to give that summary.
I can maybe take this one whilst you're
Please, thank you, sorry.
So if a medical purpose, if a product does have a medical purpose, is the product considered a medical device, or are there more decision points after that? So our MHRA guidance on digital mental health technologies qualification and classification outline that there are two main steps. The first one, the question about medical purpose, as you've mentioned, and then the second main next step is looking at the product's functionality. And there's a vast amount of detail in this guidance that goes into helping you clarify whether a product has a low functionality and therefore would unlikely to be software as a medical device, or whether it has high functionality and therefore would be software as a medical device. So I really recommend having a look at that guidance.
Thanks, Frankie. Will we be advising on how generative OpenAI is regulated for health-related advice? We cannot comment on any particular platforms that may be in or out of scope of regulation, but we have clear guidance that clarifies when a product has a medical purpose and sufficient functionality that it is likely to be in scope of medical device regulation. More information may be shared at a later date with regards to outcomes of the National AI Commission as to how future approaches to the regulation of AI may be shaped by some of those recommendations. And is there a clear definition and threshold criteria for labelling as a wellness category?
I can maybe come in this one
again. I'm so sorry.
So again, in the guidance that we've mentioned, there is a lot of clarification about where the line in the sand is for medical purpose and wellness. We may be doing some more guidance on this as well to give some extra support as to what a definition of a wellness product is. However, either way, I'd really urge you to look at what the NHS is currently doing for talking therapies in terms of categorizing and elsewhere in literature, medical literature, in terms of categorizing when something is considered to cross over a threshold to be a medical aspect to it.
Thanks, Frankie. And I think our guidance is pretty clear in terms of when something comes into scope of medical device, don't we? We've got quite a lot of definitions there. So I'm hoping that's the end of the questions, largely because I can't speak anymore. No, we have one more. Do we have any plans to engage large providers of LLMs who continue to include DMHD functionality that allows users to manage and support their mental health without appropriate limits, instead using an appropriately designed and validated tool? As I've described, our guidance at present, we think, is very clear about what should fall within and without and out of scope of medical device regulation. There is a lot of work going on to understand how generative AI and large language models in the future can be regulated, as I've mentioned, with regards to the work of the National AI Commission. And we hope that the outputs of the Commission and recommendations will enable us to strengthen our approach to a regulatory focus of these types of technologies. So I would urge people to be aware of the outputs of the Commission, and our work is aligning with that as well. So couldn't answer that one specifically at this time, but please do keep an eye on outputs in future. Where we are not sure if medical device is registered under the correct class, is there a way to liaise with MHRA to get a definitive answer? I think this depends whether you're coming from the perspective of a developer, in which case you could seek regulatory advice meeting, or you can contact us through the info@mhra.gov.uk to ascertain whether or not your determination is accurate. You could also seek advice from a regulatory consultant to be able to get that information. If you're a user and you've come across a product that you think is incorrectly classed, you can raise that through yellow cards if you have concerns about inaccurate classification of digital mental health technology. So I hope that's answered either way on that particular question. And Anne, thank you very much as well for your comment. I think we're done on questions. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone for joining. I hope the information today has been helpful, and I think I'll hand back over to Chloe.
Great, thank you, Holly and Francesca, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. Following the webinar, you will receive a short survey to capture your views. We really value your feedback, so please take this opportunity to provide your comments. On behalf of MHRA and our presenters, thank you for joining us today, and please do enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.